Yajnasya Devam Ratvijam. Hello everyone. Today we have a very special guest, Vedaveer Arya, who has been working for more than 15 years on the Indian calendar and dating system and chronology of the Mahabharata, the Buddha, and so on. So why don't we start a little discussion, and then he can have a short presentation about his calendaring system, and then we'll go into a question answer system. So, Vedaveer Arya, sir, how long have you been working on this problem, and how did you get attracted to it?
Namaste, Yajnavedamji. Yes, I'm actually basically from the childhood, I studied the Sanskrit and Sanskrit literature. I did even MA in Sanskrit literature. Thereafter, I prepared for civil services. During that time, I read the modern textbooks of history. So that's why I had the original knowledge of the original Sanskrit text before when I read the the history textbooks of written by modern historians. Then I found a serious disconnect between what actually written in the original Sanskrit text and what is being taught in the colleges and universities. Simple. One basic question that always taunted me is they say that Kalidasa, how to date Kalidasa. They say, since they say Vikramaditya was the mythical king, so they identified Gupta, Chandragupta, who had a title of Vikramaditya. He must be the Vikramaditya. So they date Kalidasa around 400 to 450 AD. Now the problem is, Kalidasa is the author of Malavika Agnimitram. It's a play. In the beginning itself, Kalidasa is actually referring to Ramilla, Saumilla, and Bhasa. These are the playwriters who existed before his lifetime. But modern historians date them after the death of Kalidasa. So it's a totally misrepresented historical fact, because the Ramilla, Somilla, and Bhasa, they were actually during the time of Sri Harsha. Sri Harsha, modern historians date after Kalidasa. So this leads to numerous chronological problems. Apart from that, entire Indian tradition or Shankaracharya traditions, they date Adi Shankaracharya 6th century BC, and some sources date him somewhere in the 1st century BC. No tradition existed 788 to 810 or 820 AD, that the timeline what is being taught today. So what I did, it is better to study further. So finally I got the literature written by Kota Venkatachalam. Then I started verifying the historical facts, and especially Shakaira, the two Shakairas mentioned by the books written by Kota Venkatachalam. Then finally, I found that it's not a Cyrus An ancient Shakaira existed, supported by epigraphic evidence. This is how my journey started, and I published my first book somewhere in 2015. That is the chronology of ancient India, victim of concoctions and distortions. Then I enlarged that same book into 3 different volumes: the chronology of India from Manu to Mahabharata, and Mahabharata to medieval era. Now I am going to bring another book by this year end, that is the historical chronology of the world and the origin of Indo-Europeans, bringing the complete arguments about the chronology. First, arriving the historical chronology based on the classical and the traditional sources and the literary sources, epigraphic sources. Then taking up the archaeological evidences. Then you have to take genetic evidence, then linguistic evidence. So this kind of an interdisciplinary study. Modern interdisciplinary studies are limited to archaeology, genetics, and linguistics. I am adding another subject, that is the historical chronology. First, you don't discount the traditional chronologies, arrive the historical chronology based on the traditional sources, and correct the chronological errors first before working out the chronology based on archaeology, genetics, and the linguistics. So
So
this is how my research is just progressing.
when you say inscriptions, are you including the Tamil inscriptions in the south, or like what is the scope of when you say inscriptions? What is covered?
Yes, yes. All inscriptions found in India, almost 1 lakh inscriptions have been found in India. But all are 99, all 100% inscriptions are dated after Ashoka only, because those are the most ancient. But I found that some of the inscriptions of Nedunjelian probably may be older than the Ashoka. So first we need to work out the chronology. Then only you can come to the conclusion that what is older, because the biggest problem is I was talking about 1381 years chronological error in dating of Buddha. That leads to, because similar chronological error you have to correct in dating of the Sangam era text and the Sangam era kings also.
So do you want to start with the presentation and then we have enough
Yes.
material to discuss?
Yeah.
Please go ahead and share your.
Yeah. Within 30 minutes, what I'll do, I'll just give you the how historical chronology of India has to be reconstructed. Apart from various other sources, the basic concept is India had a very well developed calendar starting from the Rigvedic era, and we are a continuous civilization. So we must, and we have a continuous Yuga calendar starting from Rigvedic era to till date. How we need to reconstruct the chronology? I'll just give a presentation. I'll just share.
All right. While Vedaveer is trying to share his screen, I just want to give some additional information. Vedaveer has been doing this from 15 years. He's been reading inscriptions and reading the works of others, and since the last 5-6 years, he's started publishing. He's also active on social media. You can follow him on Twitter, and you can get you can follow up with developments of his research. Okay, go ahead, sir, with the presentation.
Yeah. Yajnadevanji. Let us first understand what is the timeline of traditional Indian history. So, without any timeline, we can say the earliest is the Vedic period. Okay, then you have the post-Vedic period, Ramayana era, Mahabharata era. Mahabharata took place somewhere 5,000, 5,200 years ago. This is the traditional dating. But beyond Mahabharata era, the problem is how to arrive the chronology. But the chronological order is this one. First Vedic period, post-Vedic, Ramayana, Mahabharata. And the Kali Yuga, the calendar after 78 AD, when we started following the Shaka, we adopted the 3101 BCE as the basis for the Kali Yuga, and we started counting the elapsed years. So let us go to the our sankalpa, and all traditional sources, they not only sankalpa, numerous puranas and other Sanskrit literature say that presently this is the seventh manvantara, and the Kali Yuga is actually the present Kali Yuga is the 28th Kali Yuga. It means 27 Chaturyugas have been elapsed, and 100 means the 27 into 4, because one Chaturyuga, 4 yugas, so 108 yugas have been elapsed. Prior to 7th Manvantara, 6 Manvantaras elapsed. Then we have 3 yugas of 28 Chaturyuga up before Mahabharata era. Krita Yuga, Treta Yuga, and Dwapar Yuga have been elapsed. Now, the present Yuga is the 28th Kali Yuga. This is the traditional Yuga calendar starting from. This is the earliest calendar what we have. Now, the another story like Mayasura in his Surya Siddhanta. It is
Uh,
written that.
so hold on,
Yes.
the slides are not moving.
Okay, so what I'll do, I'll just this probably the full screen appears to be may not be. Now it is okay.
Yes, now it's better.
Okay. There are some unsolved puzzles like Surya Siddhanta. Mayasura wrote Surya Siddhanta at the end of the 28th Krita Yuga. Then Bharata Muni in Bharata Natya Shastra, it is written that he wrote Natya Shastra in the Treta Yuga of Vaivasvata Manvantara. Then it is a well known fact that Sri Rama flourished in the last century of the 28th Treta Yuga. Then Mahabharata took place almost at the end of Dwapara Yuga, presently Kali Yuga. So this, once we do the reconstruction of the Yuga calendar, then we can easily date it. Then how to do it? Another fact, whether this Yuga and Chatur Yuga had the same duration, what actually presently we know that is the Kali Yuga is almost 4,32,000 years. No. If you go to Rigvedic text or Vedic corpus or even post-Vedic literature, nowhere lakhs of years have been mentioned. They only talk about 5-year Yuga. So that's why the Chatur Yuga had 20 years just before 6777 BC. I will tell you how that date I have arrived. Then after Surya Siddhanta, since Mayasura established the Jovian cycle, because prior to Surya Siddhanta, we used to reconcile solar motion and lunar motion to have a better lunisolar calendar. But Mayasura taught us that no, you have to include Jovian motion also, the motion of Jupiter, that is 12 years. So once you reconcile all three, then your lunisolar calendar will be more accurate. So once that came, then we actually enlarged the Yuga cycle to 1200 years. Then later we enlarged 12 to 12,000 and then brought this differential duration in a ratio of 4, 3, 2, 1. Then after somewhere closer to the Mahabharata era or somewhere when Dwapara Yuga was ending, Indian astronomer multiplied the 12,000 by 360. So this is how our Chatur Yuga became 43,20,000 years long. But why the Indian astronomers enlarged the Yuga cycles to have any accuracy? But historical timelines you have to follow the way Yuga calendar evolved. But astronomical cycles, for arriving the accuracy in calendrical cycles, we have to keep both. We have to deal with them differently. But later, during the Gupta period, when Puranas were getting updated, that time they mixed up these two, astronomical cycle and historical chronology. They mixed up, and then finally we lost the chronology of ancient our history. When Megasthenes was here, he was not aware of this lakhs and crores of years. Why? He says that Indians count 153 kings starting from 6,400 or 500 years. That is exactly what I'm giving the date, that 6,777 BCE. He is actually giving the list. It means during the period when Megasthenes came to India, at that time, Indians had a historical chronology was different and the astronomical cycles were different, but later it got mixed up. Now, how to, because now while when you are reconstructing the calendar, you need a kind of an archaeoastronomical evidence to establish a sheet anchor date. That I have arrived based on this Surya Siddhanta. There is a shloka, Asmin Krita Yugasyante Sarve Madhyagata Graha. This shloka is giving that when this Mayasura observed a perfect conjunction when Sun was in the first degree of Aries, Okay. So he saw that conjunction, and then that conjunction took place on Chaitra Shukla Pratipada. Now, this is verifiable. If you do the software simulations, what I did, I took almost 16 to 16,000 years because going beyond the almost into Ice Age, it is difficult to find any civilization. But Indian chronological history starts somewhere 14,000 BC. So I simulated all types of conjunctions from 14,000 BC to till date. There is only one date possible, which actually corresponds to the details given in the Surya Siddhanta, that is 22nd February 6778 BC. So this is the year was actually the when almost the end of the Krita Yuga. So this is the hint given by the Mayasura when he was writing that. So what I found, even this kind of a conjunction took place only once in last 16,000 years. So this is the perfect and absolute date which gives a path to reconstructing the Yuga calendar. So what I have done, I'll just play one.
Sir, is this video supposed to have audio, or it's just?
So this is the conjunction. Is it's not cyclical. Like you can easily say that the Jupiter has a cycle of 12 years. Saturn has a 30 years of cycle. So some astronomical facts are cyclical, but conjunctions are not cyclical. You all planets, if they have to conjunct in a particular place, in a particular degree in a zodiac, it takes maybe 300 to 400 years or 500 years sometimes. So, if you calculate all such possibilities, these conjunctions are not cyclical. So, the conjunction mentioned in Surya Siddhanta is perfectly verifiable. And one more thing, that shloka cannot be interpreted in different ways. It clearly says, Asmin Krita Yugasyante Sarve Madhyagata Graha, and they are mentioned Meshadau Tulyatamita. Sun in the beginning of the Aries, it means in the first degree of Aries. Okay, there are 360 degrees. So you find out how many conjunctions happened when Sun was in the first degree. I can say this is the only conjunction took place when Sun was in the first degree of Aries.
Sir, sorry to interrupt. This zodiac, is it sidereal zodiac or a tropical zodiac?
This one, what I'm saying, this is the sidereal
Okay.
zodiac.
Okay, go ahead, please.
So you can simply in Indian one, you have to that Ashwini nakshatra, that Aries. If you even you take it, it's tropical also. That 0 degree we have to say, because we are talking about solar motion. So I must say that it's a tropical zodiac. So then you will get the first degree of Aries. So it's a challenge. You simulate how many conjunctions of all five planets, Sun and Moon, took place when Sun was in the first degree of Aries. So this is the only conjunction is possible. And any software you simulated, this is the only date possible. What I'm saying, you have to use that JPL horizon, because that is the most that delta t correction, time correction. what JPL Horizon, that is the most advanced an algorithm they have developed. Now, what we have to do, because that was the 28th Krita Yuga was ending. Now you have to, because after Surya Siddhanta, Yuga lengths have been increased. You have to calculate only 5-year yugas or 20-year Chatur yugas. So the 27 Chatur yugas have elapsed by 6777 BC. Then the beginning of the seventh Manvantara or seventh cycle or great cycle of Indian Yuga calendar, that became somewhere 7322 BC. Okay. Now this is the real issue. What happened in 7322 BCE? Prior to 7322 BCE, we were following the scheme of 28 nakshatras from Rigvedic era onwards. Now we have excluded Abhijit and finalized the list of 27 nakshatras, because winter solstice was shifted to Ashwini nakshatra in 7322 BC, exactly 7300 BC roughly. And this is the reason 7322 BCE we took the basis, and we have finalized the list of 27 nakshatra. That's why we started counting, means this we have taken as the beginning of a new cycle, and we started counting the Chatur Yugas, and 27 Chatur Yugas of 20 years elapsed by 6782, and the 28th Krita Yuga had only 5 years. But after the Krita Yuga, under the influence, because Mayasura wrote Surya Siddhanta, so now we have realized that Jovian cycle is extremely important. So that has been incorporated in Vedic Yuga calendar and increased the Yuga length up to 1200 years. This is the reason why a Treta Yuga had only 1200 years, and the last century of the Treta Yuga would be 5677 BC to 5577 BC. Thereafter, what happened after the end of Treta Yuga? The Chatur Yuga length has been increased to 12,000 years, because they were looking for a more accuracy in calendrical calculations, and they came up with the idea that that Krita Yuga should have a 4 times of the time. This is the 4321 in ratio. This is the reason why Dwapara Yuga had a 2400 year cycle. This is how 3177 BC. Yes.
Right. So I have a question. When you say Abhijit was removed from the calendar, are you saying that it's around 7322 BC? That's the date when Abhijit was removed?
Yes.
And that is clear from Surya Siddhanta that because of Abhijit became a pole star. So how do we know that is the date?
No, there is no reference of Abhijit became pole star in the Surya Siddhanta.
Okay.
There is no reference of Abhijit. It actually, what happened, Surya Siddhanta, what Mayasura wrote Surya Siddhanta, presently that Mayasura's original text is not available. We have only a chapter in the Pancha Siddhantika in which Varahamihira is giving the details of the Mayasura's Surya Siddhanta. Okay. Presently the text available Surya Siddhanta was written by Latadeva, who was a disciple of Aryabhatta, around 3103. He took that Kali Yuga 3101 BC. Okay. He is actually referring to two pole stars. One is the northern celestial pole star and the southern pole star. So during that time, Ekarnar and the Thuban both were the pole star during that time. So this has been interpreted saying that, oh, it is an Abhijit and as well as something else. So Agastya, this is how if they go back to somewhere 12,000 or some 13,000 BC. That is not possible, because this conjunction first you have to establish if you want to date Mayasura. Okay. Now what I'll do, this is the Yuga, our chronology, that how we evolved from 5 years to 1200, 1200 to 2400. Since just after Mahabharata era, Kali Yuga cycle has been enlarged to 432,000 years. So that's why it is still continuing, even though almost 5,180 years have been elapsed. Okay. And one more thing happened after 6777 BC. Because prior to 6777 BCE, it was very easy to count elapsed years, because you are only counting in a yuga cycle, 5 years or 20 years. In the lifetime of a person, it is very easy. Every a cycle you can count, okay, 10 yugas elapsed, 5 yugas elapsed, or a chatur yugas elapsed. It is very easy to count. But after 6777 BCE, you have enlarged the yuga length to 1200 years. Now, how you are going to count? Because nobody can live up to 1200 years. One human being. So, what they came with the novel idea, they came up with the subcycles of 100 years, and every subcycle of 100 years has been named after one nakshatra. This is called Saptarshi calendar. But this is not any astronomically, you cannot say that Saptarshis will not have a 360-degree motion, that every 100 years the Saptarshis will stay in one nakshatra. That's not correct. It is just a kind of a trick to remember how many subcycles of 100 years have been elapsed. So this was introduced 6th, but actually they were following that Paitamaha Siddhanta's Magha Shukladi calendar. The Vedic Yuga calendar was followed. This Saptarshi cycle is just to remember how many 100 years have been elapsed. So this exactly, if you come, because the entire tradition says that when Yudhishthira was ruling, that time Saptarshis reached to Magha Nakshatra, that is 3177 to 3077 BC. Now, because after 6777 BCE, that is the beginning of the Siddhanta Jyotisha in India. Because prior to that pre-Siddhantic calendar, Siddhanta Jyotisha begins with the introduction of 27 nakshatras, then introduction of Jovian cycle of 12 years, and even Mayasura introduced the concept of 7-day week, Ahargana. So these are the basic differences between Siddhantic calendar and pre-Siddhantic calendar. After the introduction of Siddhantic calendar, there are a few more new Siddhantas came up. Now, the beginning of Kali Yuga, there is a difference because every Siddhanta followed, like Saptarshi calendar. The person who a Siddhanta which follows the Saptarshi cycle, they cannot start somewhere in middle of the 100-year cycle. They have to wait the end of the 100-year cycle, then only a yuga can begin. That's why in Paitamaha Siddhanta, Kali Yuga begins from the 3176 BC only, because when Maghas Saptarshis reached Magha, so Kali Yuga must begin. So that's a Magha Shukladi. This is the reason why Mahabharata says Kali Yuga has already begun when Mahabharata was just about to happen. And Yudhishthira Samvat 3161 BCE. This is the we were using the Yudhishthira Samvat calendar. There is a reference in Jyotir Vidabharanam written by Kalidasa. Then a Brahma Siddhanta. It's mostly South India was following Brahma Siddhanta, considering this 3173 BCE. Prior to the 3600 years before this Siddhanta was introduced. And it followed 60-year cycles. And there was another tradition of Brahma Siddhanta, especially in Puranas, Vishnu Dharmottara Purana, and even the Lata Devas Surya Siddhanta. They want to start Prabhava when Jupiter in Capricorn. But some, like Aryabhatta, he starts Prabhava when Jupiter is in Aries. So this is the difference, because they both followed two different epochs. And Lata Deva Surya Siddhanta, the followers of Surya Siddhanta say, no, you can start Yuga from the conjunction only. You can't start arbitrarily in the between. So they took the conjunction that took place in Revati Nakshatra, somewhere 3101 BCE. So this is how, but all Siddhantas argue that Kali Yuga began somewhere in the in 32nd century BC. There is a difference of very few minor differences based on the tradition of various Siddhantas. Now this is the chronology. Now based on the accurate dating of Mayasura Surya Siddhanta, Now you can say that Sidhantic Yuga calendar began 7322 BCE. Prior to that, we had a Vedic Yuga calendar. So all Vedic text and the post-Vedic text have to be dated prior to that. Now, this is the when we reconstruct the pre-Siddhantic calendar. Naturally, before Siddhantic Yuga calendar, the Vedas also followed 5-year Yuga and 20-year Chatur Yuga, and 1,000 years a Mahayuga, which was later named as a Manvantara. Every 1,000 years, it is even this tradition exists in the Kerala that Kollamira and Parashuramira had a cycle of 1,000 years, and the same cycle also followed in Tamil Nadu tradition also. So this 1,000-year cycle was actually the cycle, the original cycle of Manvantara, followed during the Vedic and post-Vedic era. So what we have to do, 6 Manvantara, 6,000 years. You have to add 6,000 years, 7322 BCE. Now you reach up to 13,322 BCE. This is the plus minus, you can say few year, you are a maximum 100 or 200 years in case, roughly, if we can date it. So the Yuga calendar, the Vedic Yuga calendar that introduced for the first time, that 5-year Yuga cycle, when it was introduced, that we can say somewhere in the between 13,500 to 13,000 BCE. If we calculate backwards 7322 BCE, exactly we can say 13,322 BCE was the year in which Yuga calendar of 5-year cycle was introduced. And that Yuga calendar was continuous up to Mahabharata era. After Mahabharata era also, that the same Yuga calendar continued, and even today, in South India, I have seen, especially in Tamil Nadu and even Andhra, those who are performing Somayaga or some Vedic rituals, they follow Magha Shukla, the calendar, this Yuga calendar only they are following. They are not following the modern Shaka calendar or other. So we can say the tradition of Yuga calendar is continuous even till date. And how we have to verify the astronomical evidence for reconstructing is, there are certain the Brahma, prior to this Yuga calendar, Indians followed a rainy season calendar from Varsha Ritu to Varsha Ritu. So there is a shloka in Mahabharata. It says that Vishwamitra started counting the nakshatras from Shravana. Why Shravana? Because prior to him, Brahma Brahma observed the summer solstice at Dhanishta Nakshatra. He started a calendar. It means Brahma was the first person who linked the astronomical observation to the construction of our calendrical calculations. This is how Indian astronomy began from Brahma. And after 1,000 years, Vishwamitra observed that the summer solstice shifted to Shravana, because there was a difference of 1,000 years. Even Ramayana, it is mentioned that Vishwamitra lived after 1,000 years from Brahma. So this 1,000 years from 14,400 to 13,400 BC, Indian or ancient Indians followed a Varsha Ritu calendar. Thereafter, there was a famous rivalry between Vishwamitra and Vasishta. Both lived during the time of Trishanku. At that time, probably Vasishta differed from Vishwamitra, and he did more research. And then he came out of an idea that you have to make a calendar from equinox, not from solstice. So that time, autumnal equinox, Sharat Ritu, used to begin from Ashwini or Aries around 13,400 BCE. This is how the Indian Vedic Yuga calendar was introduced, considering the Sharat Ritu or autumnal equinox at Ashwini Nakshatra, and Chaitra was the first month during the 13,400 BC. After 2,000 years, when Daksha was performing an yajna in Kanakal, so at that time a calendar was reformed, And for the first time, Mrigashira, the list of 28 nakshatras. This is the reason why Mrigashira was called as Agrayana. We need to understand during the Rigvedic period, the calendar, a new year used to commence from autumnal equinox, but nakshatras counted from the winter solstice, because it is very easy to pinpoint a 0 degree at the solstice for calculating the nakshatras. And Falguna was the first month during the time of Daksha Prajapati. This is the reason why numerous statements in Brahmanas, Aranyakas, that Daksha Prajapati did Yagya on Falguna Purnamasi. And there is a reference of a comet also. So based on that, I have dated Daksha Yagya exactly around 11218 or 11217 BC. And then we have this autumnal equinox at Ashwini Nakshatra. Ashwini is the most important devata of Rigveda. After Indra, Agni, Soma, more than 50 suktas in Rigveda are devoted to Ashwini. So this is the reason why the Ashwini is very, very important in Indian astronomy. And even it is stated that Mesha to Kanya, this 180 degree is actually Deva Bhaga. After the opposite 180 degree is the Asura Bhaga. And entire Vedic literature, Rigveda, Yajurveda, Samaveda, Atharvaveda, and all Brahmanas, they actually refer Sharat as a synonymous to 1 year. Even Jivema Sharada Shatam, there are more than 33 references of Sharad in Rigveda as Samvatsara, as 1 year. Even more than 18 references in Taittiriya Samhita, Yajurveda. So this the Sharad Ritu calendar was introduced somewhere 13,322 BCE, and first 2000 years Chaitra was the first one. But when during the Rigvedic period, the Phalguna became the first month. And even some Vedic suktas written by Vasishtha Maitra Varuni and as well as Rishi Dirghatama refer to 12 Adityas were actually 12 Rashis, and 12 solar months have been mentioned in Yajurveda: Ishet, Vorje, Tva, Vayava, Saha, Sa, Tapas, Tapas. So these are the solar months. A solar calendar is given in Rigveda, in Yajurveda also. Then one Rigveda's mantra is mentioning that 1 year has 366 days, and there would be there is a difference of 12 days between lunar year and solar year. And Yajurveda refers to a 13th month. So this clearly shows that Vedic rishis had very in-depth knowledge of solar calendar as well as lunar calendar and lunisolar calendar. And during the Daksha Yagya, 11,200 or 11,218 BCE, a first list of 28 nakshatras was finalized, starting from Mrigashira. This is the reason Mrigashira was named after as a Daksha Prajapati. Then he had 27 daughters. So that story of marrying off 27 daughters to Chandra is actually related to the finalization of 28 nakshatras starting from Mrigashira. And why that selected? Because at that time, 11,200 BCE, winter solstice used to occur in Mrigashira Nakshatra. And after that, then 1,000 years Sarpa Yagya, that Satra Yagya took place in Naimisharanya. This was the period real Indian astronomy had been evolved, and numerous celestial bodies have been named after Vedic rishis or great Vedic kings. And this is the clear reference of Vedic Yuga calendar, because you may be wondering how the calendar existed during Rigvedic era. This is the Jaiminiya Brahmanam. It mentions Falguno vai maso dvadashahasya prathamam, Chaitraha dvitiyam, Vaishakhas tritiyam. So this passage in Jaiminiya Brahmana, it is mentioning that Falguna was the first month of Rigvedic calendar. And it also mentioning Trayodasha Masa and Chaturdasha Masa. It means they are actually referring to the first intercalary month and the second because a 5-year Yuga calendar had a 2 intercalary months. So those have been mentioned as a 13th month and 14th month. And same thing has been mentioned in Kaushitaki Brahmana also. Chaturmasyani prayunjanah falgunyam purnamasyam prayunkte mukham va etat samvatsarasya yat falguni purnamasi. So Falguna was the beginning of the new year. So Falguna, it means the autumnal equinox used to, because it is also Chaturmasya. Chaturmasya is very well defined, and it also indicates two seasons, that is the Varsha Ritu and Sharad Ritu. So you cannot have Chaturmasya during the winter solstice time. So it is exactly, it is indicating that the Sharad Ritu calendar existed and Falguna was the first month during the Rigvedic period. Thereafter, we have a reference in the Mahabharata that again Rohinyadi list, a list of nakshatras have been revised starting from Rohini, because winter solstice shifted to Rohini around 10,200 BCE, and there are numerous other stories like Prajapati was lusting about his daughter Rohini. It is actually the shifting of winter solstice from Mrigashira to Rohini, 10,200 BC. Thereafter, we have a Kritikadi list of nakshatras in Atharva Veda, because winter solstice has been shifted to Kritika around 9,200 BCE. That Nakshatra Sukta of Atharva Veda has a complete list of 28 nakshatras. Thereafter, Bharani, and then winter solstice shifted to Ashwini around 7,322 BCE. And during this period, Abhijit was excluded because the Abhijit declination was gradually reduced from 85 degrees to 65 degrees. So they were actually contemplating whether we must have 28 or 27 nakshatra. Then finally they got this trigonometric solution that 360 degree can be easily divided into 27 nakshatras without having any fractions, 13.2 degrees per nakshatra. Apart from that, it's a fact that that sidereal lunar motion has 27.32 days. So it is more closer to 27, not 28 days. That's why 27 is preferred, and this is how Sidhantic astronomy began in India. Now I will give you totally a different. Now this is the astronomy, based on the astronomical evidence. I have reconstructed the Yuga calendar starting from 13,322 BC to 7,322, from 7,322 BC to till date. This calendar is based on the astronomical and archaeoastronomical evidence. Now, in Tamil chronology, it is mentioned that Rishi Agastya, the 3 Sangam period, 4,400 years was the period for the first Sangam, and second and third Sangam. What I did, I have corrected that chronological error of 1200 years in Tamil chronology, also due to dating of Buddha. So the third Sangam period ended 1276 BCE, not in the first century BC. The 1200 years if we add up, then if you calculate 11,226 BCE was the year in which first Sangam took place, when Rishi Agastya chaired that that Sangam, or a convention took place during the Sangam. And Rishi Agastya was the contemporary of Shiva and Daksha. And what I am dating based on the other evidences also, exactly both we can correlate easily. So that's why the chronology given in Tamil, especially in the Irayana Ragappural, the commentary written by Nakkirar, is a perfect tradition chronologically. And we have the history of Pandyans up to more than 10,000 years of the Pandyan history is there. And during the second Sangam period, it is mentioned that Kavatapuram was the capital city of Pandyas, and Ramayana refers to Kavatam Pandyanam. So Ramayana is referring Kavatapuram as the capital city of Pandyas. So that took place during the second Sangam period. And Tamil tradition mentions about the Valmikinar and Tolkappiyar. Even Tolkappiyar was in the second Sangam period. So Tolkappiyam written somewhere after Ramayana era, somewhere 5000 BC. This is how we can reconcile the traditional chronology is existed in India, and then roughly if we can say what is the Indian chronology. First 1000 years was the early Vedic period, 14,400 to 13,322 BC. Thereafter we have a 3000 years of Vedic period, and in the last 1000 years all Vedas were compiled. Rig Veda, Samaveda, Yajurveda, some 11,500, 10,500 BC. Then post-Vedic period also has around 3000 years, 10,300, 7,222 BC. Now it begins the seventh cycle, that is the Manvantara, 27 Chaturyugas for 540 years. Then we have one Krita Yuga of 5 years. Then we have a Treta Yuga of 1200 years. And during that time, Ramayana events took place. Then we have a Dwapara Yuga of 2400 years. Then Mahabharata, then we are in the Kali Yuga period. This is how is the real traditional chronology, and it is totally incorrect that Indians had no knowledge of the how to keep the historical data. The real problem is the Yuga concept, the Yuga calendar, the historically how that evolved. Unfortunately, during the Gupta period, when the Puranic updaters they mixed up the astronomical cycles and the historical timelines together, and then finally we lost the chronology. And if we reconstruct this Yuga calendar based on the conjunction mentioned in Surya Siddhanta, then entire the true chronology unfolds. Thank you.
Thank you, Vedaveer Arya. It was a very interesting presentation. I have a lot of questions. I'm sure our audience will add a few questions as well. So there are many people who are now interested in reconstructing ancient Indian chronology. You may have heard of Nilesh Oak and Amitabh Ghosh and so on, and they all have their own different dates.
Yes.
And many of them are pretty much, I think everyone I know is using astronomical dating.
Yes.
So are you familiar with Amitabh Ghosh's work? He essentially says that the earliest date is around 8000 BC in Rig Veda. And some of his dates, for example, in the Shatapatha Brahmana, it says that Kritika never moves from the east. It comes to around 3100, 3000 BC and so on. So, and Nilesh Oak's date, I think you know, it's a different range altogether.
Yes.
So how is it, why do you think that is that different scholars are coming up with completely different date ranges?
Yes. The astronomy or archaeoastronomy is a science. Okay. So everybody says that if it is a science, why two archaeoastronomy expert cannot come with the same date for the same event? This is the question from the historians. The real problem is the methodology. You cannot use the archaeoastronomy to date an event in isolation, because Indian civilization is continuous. So first what you have to do, you have to construct the chronology. How you are like Shaka Samvat. Anybody using the Shaka Samvat, okay, you will be dating him, and then you will check the astronomical details, whether in case that copper plate mentions a solar eclipse, then you will check whether that took place in that particular year or not. Okay. So this is how, even beyond Shaka era also, we have to first reconstruct the calendar. Prior to Mahabharata era, we have only Yuga calendar. So we need to reconstruct it, and based on the Krita Yuga details mentioned in Surya Siddhanta, that gives an absolute sheet anchor date for reconstructing the Yuga calendar. If you are ignoring that, then you have no other option to some way, because just going to 8,000 are, first is all Vedas are referring to Sharad as a beginning of the new year. Okay. Now you have to reconcile based on the all, like Kritika Nakshatra. How you are going to date? If you say that it's only vernal equinox, then 2200 or 2300 BC, hardly 4300 years before. It means now the traditional dating of Mahabharata will be totally incorrect. Then first, how to date this fact? Because the Kritika, the 28 nakshatra list is there. It means 27. The scheme of 27 nakshatra was not known to Atharva Veda rishis. So, if you what the scheme what I have presented is, first we have to date the Surya Siddhanta, or we need to find out the end of the Krita Yuga, beginning of Treta Yuga, because this Treta Yuga, Dwapara Yuga calendar is very, very important to date Ramayana and Mahabharata era, because Vedic and post-Vedic text have been written before Mahabharata and before Ramayana era. And it is linguistically also, because the Ramayana is written in Laukika Sanskrit. Laukika Sanskrit is the later development of Vedic Sanskrit. Initially, Vedic Sanskrit, there is a transition period, that is the post-Vedic Sanskrit. Then you have a Laukik Sanskrit. So Laukik Sanskrit developed around 7000 BCE, and prior to that, it was a Vedic and post-Vedic Sanskrit. And apart from that, various other evidences. But this, the way, especially what you have talked about, the Amitabh, he is only referring to Ashwini. Ashwini, he is taking as a winter solstice at Ashwini. This is the reason. But what I am saying, you have to take autumnal equinox at Ashwini. Then it goes to 13,500 BC, not 8,000 or 7,500 BC.
Okay. So you say that all Vedas were composed at 11,500 BC, and before that, they were actually composed at a time before that date. But in the Vedas, we see ocean trade, we see horses, cows, we see wheat, we see barley in the Rig Veda, we see millets, wheat, everything else in the...
Yeah.
So, but chronologically, the earliest evidence we have for all these other grains is around 6,000 BCE. So how does it, how do you resolve that?
No, first of all, India became the agrarian society, because southwest monsoon became regular in India around 6,000, 16,000 or 17,000 BCE. Thereafter, agriculture evolved in India. If you go to Lahura Deva, you have the agriculture evidence up to 9,000 to 10,000 BC there. Lahura Deva lake in UP. Okay. If you are not finding some grains in archaeology, does not mean that the agriculture of such grains was not existed. It cannot be said. What you said, that horses, that Rigvedic horse, that Ashwa Sukta in Rigveda, what he's saying is only talking about 34 ribs of Ashwa. Okay. And Tavashringani, the research into the Rigveda, the Ashwa mentioned in Rigveda was the Shivalik horse, and Shivalik horse became extinct before 8,000 BC. That is, archaeologically, this has been established. Maybe you can say plus minus 1,000 years here and there. So this Ashwa, during the Rigvedic period, the Kekaya, the kings of Kekaya Ashwapati, he was the actually horse breeder, and the Shakas, the Scythians used to breed this Ashwa. And during there is a Jaimini Ashwamedha. Mandhata was having the only one Ashwa which was used for Ashwamedha. So the Ashwa mentioned in Rigveda was most probably, as per my understanding, It was the Shivalik horse, not this Equus caballus, that is Equus civilensis, was during the Rigvedic period. And since we became very much civilized at an early stage, so that's why Indians learned the agriculture. Apart from that, even they could do a good metallurgy also during the Rigvedic period. You need not to have the way the modern historians date very later Iron Age. That is not correct. Iron was known to, but it was not preferred because it used to rust. So they preferred. But when Indians invented that wood steel, then iron came into, we started using it. Even recently, that Sinoli chariot, they used mostly copper, because by that time we could, that wood steel was not invented by that time.
Right. So same question about Sangamira, if it started around 11,200 BCE.
Yes, yes.
Wasn't South India, sparsely populated till about 2000 BC or 1000 BC?
No, I think these are only the biblical mindset based calculations are how population evolved. They think that 3000 BC is the flood. Then you start simulating that how much population existed. It is difficult to say. Even whatever, even 10 lakhs or 20 lakh people are existed. Why a Tamil civilization, sorry, it is Indian civilization only, that culture of South India can evolve very, very well. Because as per the Puranas, the four brothers, they belong to one dynasty, Puru dynasty, and the Turvasha, because the Shibi Chakravarti, Shibi was the king of that Pakistan region, especially that Kekaya, Madra. His descendants were this force Pandya, Chera, Chola. They came and settled in the south, and this is the reason why Cholas were called as the Sembians, that they have a connection with the Shibi of that Pakistan region, present Pakistan. Actually, that was India only. So then Rishi Agastya. And the language, as per the linguistics, if we do the simulations, there was I can say Proto-Indian, I don't call it Proto-Sanskrit or Proto-Tamil, a Proto-Indian language existed. From that Proto-Indian languages, Vedic Sanskrit has been evolved based on an artificial improvisation. You have invented a syntax called Sanskrit grammar. Based on that, Vedic grammar, Vedic Sanskrit was evolved. So I say Vedic Sanskrit is an artificial language evolved based on a syntax called Sanskrit grammar. A natural evolution was a Proto-Tamil or a very early Tamil. And from that Tamil language, we came with the classical, that is during the Tolkappiyam period. He talks about Sen Tamil and Kudun Tamil. So this is how the South Indian languages evolved. So Tamil and Vedic Sanskrit both are the same sisters born to the same mother.
Right, right. So I think others have also proposed this theory that Dravidian languages and Sanskrit, the what is called Indo-Aryan languages are related. One of them is Tonayan Belyayev, and what he did was he found Dravidian words in other branches of Indo-European. And I also did some search, and I found some words in, for example, Greek. There's a word palaios. That's same as Tamil word for old. Palay, right? Palayos. So there are.
Yes, yes. We need to understand, because the North Indian languages what today have, they are very later languages. South Indian languages, very ancient languages, similar maintained, because North India was disturbed and there was too much in the way the languages evolved. Okay, so the Tamil and Vedic Sanskrit are almost 13,000 year old. Presently, what modern linguists say, somewhere 7000 BCE, 7000 to 6000 BCE, they say this is the origin of Indo-European. Prior to that, some trans-Eurasian languages existed. The trans-Eurasian languages had a numerous families, and Dravidian languages belong to that particular trans-Eurasian. Where is the trans? You have to simply that you go back another the 7,000 years before. It is actually from Indian languages, various the Indo-European languages evolved.
Right. And I see there are so many different calendars. There is a autumnal calendar, there's a spring equinox calendar, there's a winter solstice calendar, there's a summer solstice calendar. And were people in different regions using them simultaneously, or did people just say, hey, I'm going to start using this new calendar? Like what's the reason for all these calendars existing at the same time?
No, it is actually after Sidhanti era. Prior to Sidhanti era, we have only one calendar, that is the Yuga calendar. Okay, that began from the autumnal equinox. But what happened gradually, because we are a continuous civilization, and if you are following a calendar for thousands of years, what happened? The point where we have started, because a lunar month cannot be reconciled with the this precession. Why? Because you can't have always a Vasanta Ritu, a spring equinox in a Chaitra month. So during the Rigvedic autumnal equinox used to occur in Chaitra month. Okay, but after 13,000 years, somewhere 1st century BCE, the vernal equinox used to occur in Aries or in Ashwini Nakshatra. This is the problem. The same Yuga calendar that used to commence at autumnal equinox during the Rigvedic period, same Yuga calendar, when it has come down up to the Mahabharata era, during the Mahabharata era, winter solstice used to be the beginning of the Magha Shukla Pratipada. If you go back to the 9,000 or 10,000 BCE, Magha Shukla Pratipada was at autumnal equinox. So this is 6,000 to 7,000 years. There is every 2,100 years the 30-degree precession that leads to one lunar month problem. Right. So this is the reason why a calendar that began in autumnal equinox became a winter solstice calendar during the Mahabharata era. And after that, again, it became the vernal equinox calendar, presently what we are following. Due to this problem, the trepidation concept came into existence. They thought probably Ashwini to Rohini, or somewhere Mrigashira, and from again Mrigashira to Ashwini. This is the trepidation. This is not a trepidation. This is how lunar months are. The lunar calendar cannot be reconciled with the seasonal calendar.
So do you think that the autumnal calendar is the oldest calendar? Because even for like Diwali and all this, they all come in the autumn, all the New Year festivals.
No, presently, but during the Rigvedic period, because that 13,000 BC, if you see, why Vasishtha, during that time, the half year from autumnal equinox to vernal equinox used to have a more than 185 to 189 days. Okay, but presently, after Mahabharata era, the period of vernal equinox to autumnal equinox have a more days. So during that time, this was the more accurate calendar. Due to, if you read the Milosevic cycles, due to that, what happens that every half year is not both half years are not equal.
Right.
So you have to start a calendar with the greater half of the year. So during the Rigvedic period, the 13,500 after, during that period, autumnal equinox to vernal equinox, that half year used to have a more days than the vernal equinox to autumnal equinox. But presently, ulta. So this is the problem.
Right.
You cannot have a perpetual calendar because these things is not so easy. Today we can understand based on this all software simulations.
Yes. So we will go to the audience questions, but before that, I think what would be useful for people like me who have some bit of Sanskrit knowledge and some bit of astronomical knowledge is a short list of all the observations and the dates that we can put in the astronomy software to verify that yes, this is a date. So because otherwise it's all spread across your books. It's kind of hard to.
No, what I want to give one suggestion here is that first we need to reconstruct the Indian calendars, eras and Samvat first. Okay, if you are try to interpret, because it is very in Sanskrit, you have a freedom to interpret differently first. Okay, and second, some people having no knowledge of the grammar, they even come up with some wild translations. So when you reconstruct this calendars existed during the Mahabharata era, Ramayana era, Vedic era, how the tradition continued, then the interpretation or even first you have to give the more credence to the shlokas which cannot be translated differently.
Right.
Okay, if some can be interpreted differently, then that cannot become an evidence to a primary evidence. It can be only secondary evidence.
Okay, let's go to audience questions. I think the first question is, this is something maybe you can answer.
Okay, no. If I know the JPL Horizon or this whatever the softwares are available, especially the time correction, they say that they will give up to 3000 BC. They say it is. They can say it's an accurate, but beyond that, they cannot take the responsibility for the accuracy. But that does not mean that you will have a after 3000 BCE every calculation will become illogical or you can't believe it. No, few, as long as you can get few hours or few minute error, that's not a problem. If you are getting more than 1 day error, then that is a problem in a calendar. So even you can simulate this JPL horizon backwards, you may get maybe even 20,000 years, or so you may get a maximum few minutes or a 1 hour maximum or 2 hours maximum. So that is not a big problem when you reconstruct a calendar.
Right. I think the biggest variable is the speed of the Earth itself, the rotation of the Earth. So what will happen is the sunrise time and the sunset time that can change. The noon time can change.
Yeah. Yes, you need to ensure that there is no error of more than one day. Then it's okay.
Okay, next question about Ramayana in Southeast Asia.
No. It is not during the Cholas. It is actually entire Southeast Asia is, I will always say, it is an extension of Indian civilization, where the western side is the more migration of Indians in migration of Indians. Southeast is actually the extension. During the, if you read the history of Burmese, okay, Ikshwaku dynasty descendants from Ayodhya, they settled close to the. It is written in Burmese history. Then the same people spilled over to the Thailand, and that's why even today Thailand king has a name of Rama 1, Rama 2, Rama 3. This is actually the Ikshwaku dynasty. Let us do the genetic studies also. As per my chronological studies of the Burmese history, this event took place that Ikshwaku, the descendants of Ikshwaku dynasty, settled in Burma and Thailand around 4500 BC, almost 6500 years before. This is how Ramayana traveled to the entire Southeast Asia, and Ramayana known to them. That's why even during the Fahian time, Fahian was very much depressed that all are Hindus here, because he was actually looking for the Buddhist. So the Ramayana, actually the gateway was Burma and Thailand, and since Ikshwaku dynasty, the descendants started ruling this Burma and Thailand. This is how the Ramayana traveled from there to Cambodia, then Indonesia, So it is much older, maybe 3000. First, we need to understand that Kamba Ramayana dating. Kamba Ramayana is very grossly wrongly dated around 900 or 700 AD. It's not correct because the meter he used, and as per my chronological dating, the Kamba Ramayana has to be dated somewhere 1200 to 1300 BC.
Yeah, this question is the fact that my decipherment of the Harappan script shows that it's in Sanskrit. Does it have impact on your chronology?
No, whether it is because Sanskrit language existed from Rigvedic era onwards. What I am saying, there are no Harappans, or there are no we should not say it is a Harappan civilization that existed, and once that became extinct, then Indian civilization born. No, the period where the these Indus seals having a script have been found, that period is, as per my chronological dating, between after the Ramayana era and before the Mahabharata era. Okay, presently the end of the this is 1900, but once we have to account for the 1381-year chronological problem, then you have to date this mature Harappan also goes back to 1300 years backwards. So that's why around Mahabharata era, before Mahabharata era, the Scythians were dominating this area because the Scythian migration led to the that Cimmerians and Scythians settled at Black Sea. Then they populated entire Western Europe. So this is well documented fact, how Scythians dominated, and then they gone to that Yamnaya culture, and towards that all Slavic countries. Then the Scythians migrated from this Pakistan area, or the Uttarakuru, the Xinjiang area, to the China. So this is how from that end Manchuria to the almost Ireland. These are all Scythian migrations out of India. So these Scythians were the horse breeders during the Rigvedic period. Most probably, I can, as per my that Shivalik horse. Presently, I don't know what kind of a whether they could get full body. Probably the unicorn horse, what has been depicted in Indus Seals, was a Shivalik horse. Probably Shivalik horse was a unicorn horse, and Scythians were the breeders of the Shivalik horses during the Rigvedic period. That's why that became their power symbol, and they used it. And the same the Scythian, this Shivalik horse unicorn is also mentioned in the Arattas and Sumerian when during the time of Gilgamesh also. So there is a need to converge it, but there is a very few the whatever the symbols or the script is available. That is very little to reject the traditional chronology. Even though it is Sanskrit, and actually the Scythians were also speaking the Sanskrit or Prakrit kind of a language only.
So, sir, what's your date of Mahabharata?
The 3000, the traditional dates are perfect if you correct the dating of Buddha.
Okay, because the most of the Indus seals are dated from 3000 BC to 1900 BC. So it is. Should
That is
start from
actually this dating is based on the assumption that Buddha lived around 500 BC.
No, it's based on the stratigraphy, right? Because they know like it's found at this
No.
depth.
That stratigraphy also this assumption that Mauryan period cannot be dated beyond 300 BC. Okay. You have to first correct your dating up to Buddha first. Then this stratigraphy will work only that same 1300-year chronological problem.
Okay, I think that's all the time we have for now. It's been a great session, and thank you, sir, for taking the time. And hopefully, once your book is out, we can have another session so that people have a chance to hear it straight from your own words.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you, sir, and see you next time. Bye.